Hi everyone, my name is Pian Pian. I'm the founder and CEO of Amotions. Amotions is a platform to help you and your team and your managers to be more effective and help you improve your performance, relationships, and soft and leadership skills. Today, we're very excited to have certified leadership and career coach Julie with us. Julie, thank you so much for joining, and thanks again for sharing the insights in advance.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Julie, besides having multiple years of extensive experience coaching leaders and their teams in the career and leadership development space, she also has extensive leadership experience working at companies such as Microsoft. Julie, is there anything else you would like to add for your self introduction?
I think that you've got the most of it. I mean, in essence, what I do in my work is that I help leaders get great jobs. And so whether that's going through a career change or certainly for those that are internal, they're looking for that great role internally and or the promotional growth. And so I love working with leaders in all of the above spaces.
That's great. I think everyone likes to keep growing, and that's a very important area to help people with. So, yeah, thank you. So, Julie, I heard that you're writing a book on voicing your values. Curious, what makes you excited about that topic, and what kind of insights you would like to share on that topic?
Well, yes, thank you. I am in the process of doing that. And it's actually been a decades long desire for me. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story that actually came to be. I was at an event and they had a palm reader at this event. And I went and I thought, oh, that would be a cool thing to do. And she read my palm and she looked me right in the eyes and she said, "Are you a writer?" And I said, "Well, no." And she's like, "You need to be." She's like, "You have a message." And so that was a seed that stuck in the back of my mind for such a long time. And I guess I didn't really know what I wanted to focus that writing on. I do love to write in general, but to channel it into a book. And so for me, and doing the coaching work that I've done, one of the things that I've learned from leaders that they tell me in these confidential conversations is that the place they most of the time they don't struggle so much with what they want to do. Most leaders, at least the ones that I work with, they have a pretty strong vision of what it is that they want, whether it's that promotional growth or whether they want to move into a new role that's more fulfilling to them. The place that they struggle is how to do that and how to communicate themselves and how to position themselves for that thing that they've been dreaming about for many years. And so this was something that I started paying attention to probably really seriously a couple of years back because I started to notice the trends in the conversations that I was having. And it's definitely a area where I have a background of expertise and a passion as well. And so part of the coaching work that I do is helping clients really be able to articulate themselves and what they want to do, or as I like to say, voice their value. And so that's where the book came to be, because it was just the topic was really an important one that came up from a majority of my clients. So yes, it's in process. I'm excited about it. In the writing process right now and to be published probably in the beginning of 2023.
Well, we're excited to read about the book and learn more about it as it comes to the world. It's have as a preview, like in a specific scenario. Do you have examples like how a leader can or individual can handle voicing their values and what they're kind of like dreaming about, passionate about?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm actually doing a extended workshop over a set of 4 weeks coming
Mm.
up next month, actually. So you don't have to wait for the book. If this is something that's on your mind, I would definitely not encourage you to wait until 2023 to be able to learn the skills. Essentially, the process is that I work with on my clients to be able to come up with the ability to communicate your value and to articulate your differential. it really boils down to 5 steps. So the first one, I think the first 2 are kind of blended together, and that's to be able to have words to describe who you are as a leader. And in 2 key areas, one is knowing your core values, because that's really, in essence, words that describe who you are, like passionate, like disciplined, like high integrity, things like that would be descriptions of core values. And then the second piece is really being able to name your core strengths. I actually like to call them your superpowers, which are really these elevated short list of the things that you're really good at and that give you energy when you're doing them. So knowing your values and and naming your strengths is necessary in order to get to the third step, which is being able to have a framework to define your, what I call your value prop, or your brand statement. And so that's a framework that I help my clients to build out for themselves that really summarizes in one sentence who they are professionally. Like, I'm a passionate sales executive, for example. What they do, and this is a big one because people get a little vague typically, but being able to really articulate what it is that you do as in this example, a sales professional. So that might be driving revenue, that might be increasing market share, that might be customer or partner satisfaction. So really getting clear on what is it that the impact is that you bring. And then the last part of the sentence is the how you do it, collaborative partnerships or an epic attention to detail. So basically you're customizing in one sentence this value prop for yourself. And so that's another step in the process. The other thing that I do work with clients on that is huge, that would be step 4, is really understanding many of those key things that diminish your confidence. This is something that comes up for a lot of people because they may know their strengths, they may know their value and their value prop and have that written for themselves, but they feel like they are an imposter. So imposter syndrome comes up. Or maybe they're really worried about the competition. And so they kind of have a fear underneath it of looking like a fool or looking stupid. And so they may resist or kind of back off or even not be able to communicate themselves with confidence because there's some worries in the back of their mind. So really having some skills or tools to be able to know why this is happening and what to do about it is huge. And then the last piece, of course, is being able to just have a script. Like, this is what I realize with a lot of clients, even those at super high levels in organization, directors, general managers, etc., is that sometimes it's not knowing who they are or even have a value prop. They just don't know what to say in a interview conversation or a networking conversation. So having some sample scripts is huge. And then, last thing that I would say about the whole process is practice makes perfect. So having someone, this happens a lot. Like, you think you have it perfectly scripted out for yourself, but there's a very different thing when you actually are saying it out loud to someone that really elevates it. So having a trusted colleague, a mentor, a best friend that you can practice what you're saying and get trusted and safe feedback is incredibly, incredibly helpful. So that's kind of at a glance, the quick process that helps people really be able to get to the place where they can really confidently voice their value.
Thank you. That sounds like a really good process. So I like the 5 steps and kind of start with understanding and having the awareness of who you are, what your core value and you're passionate about, and then being able to summarize it and then practice it with colleagues and friends.
Yeah, this is the piece that is important with the values and the strengths, is those are your differentiators. Sometimes what I find that a lot of leaders that I work with do is they end up kind of blending themselves in using a lot of corporate lingo. And that may be easy to do because it's like, oh, I'm a strategic leader driving success, like these. But the problem is that when you're using a lot of corporate lingo, then it ends up kind of just blending and blurring into what everybody else says too. And so That's why it's really powerful to have some really core words that are true for you, because it really differentiates you and you can build that into your value prop.
That's a great point. And I like your part about practice makes perfect. Part of what we're building in Emotions is create a community and a platform for people to practice with each other. So you can also get like feedback from the community members, not just your friends and colleagues. So if you want more honest feedback from everyone else, yeah.
That is one of the biggest things that my clients tell me, because I too have a group format in when I'm working with clients. And some of the most powerful feedback that they get is from their peers, just like what you've created in that community. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's incredibly, incredibly helpful.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you. And there are some scenarios I have heard of, like related to what you talk about, voicing your values. There are some leaders that are in like mid level management, and then they're not only having a team that they lead and manage, but they also need to think about how to manage up and um, provide recommendations. Sometimes not necessary to. I mean, they probably want career growth and think about promotion as well. But sometimes it's more like how to make their ideas heard, and if they have
Yeah.
some kind of recommendations, ideas, or for things. Is there a way to apply the framework you just talk about in that scenario?
Well, absolutely. And so if you're a mid-level manager and you want that career growth, and you need to be able to clearly communicate that to your manager, which is of absolute necessity, in otherwise you'll plateau in your career and stay in the same role, then certainly knowing where you're really strong and how that relates to specific job responsibilities. So the
Mm-hmm.
kind of roles where you will really thrive and make a huge impact. So having that clarity is really, really important. So that's a lot of the knowing who you are part. The second thing that comes up with people, and this is in regardless to what level they are, but it can come up mid-level management a lot, which is the confidence piece. And so you may know the role that you want to have, but lack of confidence, or if in the back of your mind, you're feeling like, I don't know how to communicate this, or I'm a little fearful of what my manager will say, or if any of those confidence things come up, that can be a showstopper too. And then being able to really communicate that in a way that um, shows that you're not just asking. This is a big thing that comes up. It's not like you're just asking for your manager to solve it for you. I want to be promoted. What do I need to do? Or asking for your manager to give you solutions. There may be an element of that, of management feedback, that most definitely is important. But being able to be proactive in the process and say, here's the role, here's why I think that I could be a good fit for it. So you're really taking ownership of being able to communicate the impact that you'll be able to give, and really being confident in saying, career growth is incredibly important to me, or advancement is important to me because. And so that it's not like you're just wanting to pursue a job because the title is better or the salary level band is higher, that you're able to articulate your why behind it. And also, really importantly, what the impact would be to the business. That's a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing how to be able to do that in a way that your manager can understand you is part of that process of managing up, is advocating for yourself. But I will say that there are some other, what I call like master level communication skills in the
Mm-hmm.
process. And so some of that has to do with leadership presence. Some of it has to do with just knowing some of the nuances of communication, tone, volume, upward inflection. Some of those things can actually position you to come to show up in a really strong and confident way. And thus your manager is like, okay, I guess they're serious. Like, let's pay attention and see how we can help them advance. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the managing up piece is an important one. You raise a really big topic.
Yeah, definitely. The parts you talk about in terms of like the tone and voice and confidence. All these are really important components. In a related case, like I think you mentioned, it's important to articulate the impact that somebody's bringing.
Right.
And in the day to day, I think more of the conversations would be about like specific projects somebody's working on or their team is working on, and then recommendations on starting a new project or specific ways to approach solving different business problems.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there a way to think about how somebody can like voice their recommendations on how to approach a solving a business problem might be differently than what other senior leaders are talking about or think about problems in a different way?
That's a really situational, guess that's a little bit of a tough question for me to answer because it's so situational.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to provide guidance from a more general standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
certainly being really aware of what the strategic outcomes and goals are for that particular project. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're working with key stakeholders, that you're able to align on what are the outcomes that we are all collectively in agreement on
Mm-hmm.
of where this project needs to go. So there's a confidence and a presence and a skill, I would say, in kind of getting everyone on the same page,
Mm-hmm.
which is very important in the beginning, aligning with what the key strategic outcomes. And so as a mid-level manager, sometimes what can happen is that you get so heads down on the work that you're doing that you may not be as aware potentially of what the corporate VP or the senior VP
That's
thinks
right.
about
Yeah.
that. And so that's why I say understanding the strategic initiatives, because in leading a big project and being able to successfully drive it forward and position yourself in a manner, especially if you're in charge of leading that initiative or
Yeah.
leading that project, where others will respect you and see you as credible in the process, that really there's a skill in managing up and managing across. So knowing and making sure that the key executive sponsors for that particular project are on board and that you have a close enough relationship with them so that you would know what they would say in terms of what the outcomes are of that project or that initiative, where it maps to strategic priorities of the company or the division. Like having knowledge of that is really critically important. The risk of not doing so is that you could start driving down on a project and thinking that you're doing great work, and you could be, but then the executive comes in the room and says, no, we actually needed to go this way. So you've lost time and resources of doing a lot of work that you maybe were off course on. And then, of course, after that strategic alignment is making sure that you know what the objectives are for what each different person that's in the initiative, what their part in it is as well. Because sometimes that can be the hardest part of the project, isn't necessarily getting the work done, but working effectively with all the different teams and groups that are also a part of a big initiative. And so there's both a skill and a confidence in being able to do that. And then certainly having just the basic ability and skill to drive the initiative forward. So make decisions, move on, be able to assure that everybody is in agreement, that they're showing up. You know, those are just really critical aspects of being able to drive it forward. And as you do so, showing up with that confidence. So, you know, if you have some confidence issues, you're not going to be able to do that quite as effectively. So that's why any blockers that have come up have to be essentially built. You get the tools to be and skills to be able to overcome those. Otherwise, you may be in a room trying to lead a project and no one's really taking you seriously. That can be problematic, of course. And so being able to position, maybe in this example that you brought up, it's not positioning yourself and your value, but positioning that initiative or that project in the context of other competing projects and initiatives that people are working on. So some of the same framework can play out in a general sense. Obviously, there will be specific differences based on the specific situation that each person is in.
That's right. Yeah. I think having the framework is too valuable. I think you mentioned three key components here. One is the confidence. Second one is the having the skills, and then the third one is having like the context or understanding of the overall strategic outcomes that everyone is driving for. I'm curious, how would you suggest somebody to get each of these three components? Um,
Yeah, well, in the very beginning, if you've been put or asked to lead a large initiative, first things first, make sure that you are talking to or meeting with whoever the executive sponsor is. And if there is not an executive sponsor, get one or confirm, because that can really be a problem too, that I have seen happen before, where you start going down a path of a particular project and then an exec comes in later and says, what is this whole team doing again? And why are all these resources working? That's incredibly disappointing and frustrating for everyone involved. So number one, make sure that you have the executive sponsorship, that you know the strategic priorities that are related to that in that executive sponsor's words themselves, and that you continue to keep that visibility with that leader. That's really key. And then certainly getting the right people. And if you don't know, then doing the research and or identifying who are the right players that need to be a part of getting this initiative done and completed. And then really getting the right people who have the level of ownership that's necessary to make decisions. That can be another setback that can be frustrating, is that you may get someone who's kind of in a related team or perhaps lower level in the organization. They don't have decision-making authority. And so you're in trying to move things forward and you don't have the right people in the room to make decisions, and maybe things backtrack or unravel. So you definitely don't want that to be the case either. And then really just, of course, the skill of being able to map out all the aspects of that particular initiative or project. When is it, what are the outcomes? What's the rhythm of the business? What are the key deliverables that each of the teams need to have, and then being able to drive forward and making sure that there's a regular rhythm of being able to communicate what the status is and what the roadblocks or issues or dependencies are. So
yeah,
that's this high level summary of what I would recommend on that piece.
great. Yeah, thank you. I hear quite a bit of mentioning of building a relationship with people, the right people, having everyone aligned, very important here.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably been, I'm sure everybody, myself included, in my corporate days,
Yep.
where it's not the budget or the time or the strategic priority that causes things to delay. It's the inability to actually work together, or the friction or conflict between teams or between groups or between, power struggles in making decisions, which are all those interpersonal conflicts.
Yes.
And those can go, as I'm sure everyone that's listening to this has probably experienced, that can go one way or the other.
Yes.
That can really streamline and expedite getting something done if everybody is working together as a team and on the same page. And it can really go the opposite way too, and cause an incredible amount of friction and frustration and wasted resources of time and budget in an organization if that isn't the case. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm a huge advocate of making sure that there's a good interpersonal or professional relationships that are established.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's really important. As you talk about some of the conflicts and people need to handle, I hear quite often from sometimes community members that, like, what would you actually do if you're in contact or talking to colleagues, and colleagues might be disagreeing with you and they might be talking over you, like, how would you suggest somebody to handle conflicts properly and handle interpersonal dynamics?
Yeah, that can come up, and that's incredibly frustrating. If there is, oftentimes what will happen is that there will be one person in the team or in the room who is really pushing back. Right. And really causing conflict and really debating and essentially being a roadblock. And that's incredibly frustrating. What doesn't work is to try to duke it out with that person in a meeting room or even on a video with multiple people. That is a recipe for disaster, as I'm sure that you may know. And so certainly identifying the specific people and setting up a separate meeting with that one person to really uncover and get beyond where's the conflict coming from. And so that's what I call those moments, or those discussions, the courageous conversations,
Mm,
because you may need to suspend the need to be right and just come in with a very open mind and a sense of curiosity to understand why that person is pushing back. And sometimes it's because they're threatened, because they have competing priorities. There could be a variety of different reasons, but creating a place where you're coming into the conversation with a desire to gain collaboration and trust. That is where you can have someone feel like there's a conversation where they can actually disclose what it is, because there's always a reason.
mm,
There's always a reason. You just may not hear the real reason in a big forum with a lot of people, because people want to preserve their level of credibility or significance or reputation or any of those kinds of things.
mhm.
But if it's a pattern of behavior that is derailing the progress on a team, then really determining how you can get to that person and how you can have a real honest one-on-one. If that fails and is unsuccessful, then it can be a case for escalating and really trying to remove the roadblocks. But there's a skill there and the ability to really have that conversation to understand what's underneath the roadblock or the pushing back. And then you can solve for what really is the problem versus the outward behavior that you're seeing in the meeting.
Right. Yeah. I I like what you mentioned in terms of making clear the goal is to gain trust and collaboration, and then taking the time to talk through things with people one on one, and instead of always in a group meeting. It's
That's
helpful.
right. If you have the trust and you know how to build the trust, you can still agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
You can still have different approaches. You can have different communication styles, but there's a foundation of trust and mutual respect
Right.
that will still allow you to get through issues and hurdles and setbacks and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's really, sometimes that's a real skill in being, and there's the confidence that comes back again as
Right.
well, is being able to have that kind of a conversation and not get emotionally triggered your own self, which sometimes can be hard to do.
That's true. And how would you suggest people to do that? Being able to build the trust and gain the collaboration in virtual settings when they can't meet in person.
Well, I think that there's a couple of options. Certainly, that's a place for sure where practice makes perfect can be helpful. So
Mhm.
if there's a really difficult person in the team and you have someone, whether it's a trusted peer, maybe a coach, a mentor, where you can discuss the scenario and be open to getting feedback and even role playing a little bit.
Mhm.
How am I coming across with this? And get that feedback. That can be huge. It can be incredibly, incredibly helpful. The other piece too is just having the courage to come in with the right intent, meaning my intent is to get to a place of trust and not be attached on exactly how you get there,
Mhm.
but be open to how the conversation unfolds and not be needing to control and not needing to have it be in your definition of perfect, because that can mean that judgments can kind of go back and forth, which can cause someone to even get just even more frustrated in the conversation and kind of just check out. And so practicing getting feedback can be
Mhm.
incredibly helpful, especially if it's a high stakes conversation. And going in just with the right intent and being transparent about that and being open to how you get there, but that you're going to agree that, hey, we need to get on the same page and establish trust as stakeholders or leaders in this meeting. How can we go about doing that? And letting there be an openness for that to kind of unfold and have people share what's on their mind.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful to hear this, like being able to be open-minded and practice and get feedback from coaches or peers or community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. And related to earlier what we're discussing in terms of thinking about career growth, as organizations grow, leaders not only to think about their own growth, but also the growth of their team. Like, how would you suggest a leader to think about and approach how to grow an organization, how to scale the team, how to scale the culture, how to scale the team in a way that everyone is aligned with values? Do you have any thoughts on these?
I do. That's not a short answer, actually. That's a much longer, there's a lot packed into that question. That's a much longer answer.
Yeah.
I will say that my level of expertise and coaching is more around the individual development and not so much organizational structure and teams. So that said, as a leader, I think the same principles go back, understanding the executive priority, really being able to have the right mentors in making decisions if it's organizational change. It's bringing in the right experts. If you're looking for a cultural change and you know that that's necessary in the organization, then being able to talk to experts and or peers who have done this before to be able to get that knowledge. That's really important, because if you're talking about the careers and the stakes and the roles for multiple people, tens, 20s, 100 people in your organization, you want to be able to come in prepared and confident and have the right level of expertise. As it relates to the individuals on your team, then that is very much a priority, especially right now with what is happening with the Great Resignation. Retention is a really big deal. And people will leave organizations not as much because the job wasn't right or the pay wasn't what they want, but one of the number one reasons is because of management, or poor management, as the case might be.
That's
And
true.
so really showing up and being present and holding those one-on-ones and having those career development discussions and really advocating and supporting your individual team members' growths and having a growth plan, career development plan, and actually having a plan and a process for doing that, is those are the ones where you're going to have loyal team members that will follow you and will essentially be fully engaged in the work that they're doing. I can't tell you how many conversations I have with mid-level and higher level managers who are leaving their organization or they want to leave their job largely because of, in their words, dysfunctional leadership or unsupportive or disengaged or non-existent management.
Right.
So it's really key to be able to have that, prioritize that, which can be really hard. I get it. Like, there's a lot of priorities for a lot of companies. Their directors and leaders and managers aren't just responsible for the leading and directing and managing. They're also responsible for a whole set of deliverables and commitments their own self as well. So
That's right.
I don't underestimate how challenging that is from a balancing act, but knowing that prioritizing the individual development of your team members is so critical, because retention is very real, especially right now.
Right. Um, how does that work when somebody wants the promotion that the company or the organization wouldn't be able to afford to provide a promotion right now, and or if somebody's interest in a particular working on like a project they think it's exciting, but there are people who needs to work on some projects that might be less like new projects. So how would you suggest, like as an individual, to think about that, and also as their managers to think about these things?
It's a great question. And I actually did an entire 2-part workshop for a team in organization in Seattle in the healthcare industry on this topic. And so in essence, my guidance to them was to think about the word growth from a career standpoint, in a broader definition than just a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a very real situation, especially with smaller or mid-sized organizations, is that they just don't have a lot of positions open, even if they have these rock star A-list team members on the team. And so if you're looking for career development and career growth, then really thinking about that growth from a broader standpoint than just getting a promotion. So such as, can I develop this new skill? Do I want to develop this new competency, these set of responsibilities? And so thinking about expanding your skill set as a way of growing, and also being proactive in the process, and perhaps I'll say advocating for yourself, versus waiting for your manager to just find you a great role. That's a
Mm-hmm.
huge part of the process, is this really coming from this place of self-advocacy. What can I do? And so there may be a level of being patient, but if you're continuing to advocate for yourself, then when that position does open up, that you would likely be one of the first people in line, particularly if you've developed the skills. And so that kind of goes both ways, both from a management, an individual contributor looking for growth, as well as the manager. From a management standpoint, there's a broader perspective too. So yes, it's encouraging your team members, having a process, encouraging them to come up with a plan versus just relying on you to like give them a promotion. That usually doesn't land so well in a manager's eyes. But there may also be a process of letting go. And what I mean by that is, if you have an A-list rock star player on your team that is so capable of more, and your organization just doesn't have the opportunity, and that person is very, very driven in their own professional career, they may end up moving to a different division, or they may end up leaving the company and going to another position. And so instead of trying to control it and keep that person in their role, or pacify them with some promises that you may or may not be able to deliver on, that you are supporting them in their growth, even if that means that they end up leaving the company. And that can be a really, really tough message.
Right.
But it's really supporting that person's growth to the best that you have ability to do so. I've talked to leaders who have actually created positions in the organization and have gone to bat for their A-list players because they know how valuable they are to the organization. So essentially, it's looking at a lot of creative, different kinds of solutions to keep your top talent on your team. But at the end of the day, if it means that their growth means leaving the organization, then that may be the right thing to do for them.
Yeah, that's true. I like the mindset of kind of, again, being open-minded and think about growth in various ways, and being creative to think about growth both as individuals, but also how to think about it for your team. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a great message. Thank you. Audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop in the chat. You mentioned about the great resignation. I think it's kind of retaining the right talent's a big thing that people think about. We also hear there are multiple layoffs going on right now. As individuals think about that and companies think about that, how would the leader balance like keeping the right talent, but also maybe sometimes there are other kind of macro level trends going on? How would someone be able to balance that?
Well, this is yet another case to really be thinking about your professional growth and development and ability to communicate and articulate your value, and not wait until after the reorganization or the layoff occurs, which is sadly what ends up happening, is that people get so busy in their career that they end up putting their own professional development on the wayside or on the deprioritization because they have so much to do. But then that can end up being very difficult, of course, if a layoff occurs. And so, yes, there's a couple of things that I'm seeing. So in terms of the great resignation, when you have someone that has developed their skills knows their value and their impact and has this confidence in being able to communicate themselves clearly, confidently, with credibility, then those are the people that are getting multiple offers. And you, especially in, we live in the Seattle area, a lot of tech firms here. So I'm seeing that a lot with major tech firms in with top talent. But that only happens when people have this level of training, expertise, credentialing, experience, and confidence in communicating themselves. Those are the ones that get to choose where they want to be. And so in my best guidance for those that are listening to this that may not have been in that place yet is identifying the skills that you want to develop and grow, and then really prioritizing those. And so some people are very self-motivated, so they can develop those skills and they will just go for it, and they'll take whatever trainings or learnings or courses, certifications, that kind of thing, and then they'll build those skills themselves. If that's not you, and that's the case with a lot of people, then getting the support and the expertise, whether that's from an organization, whether that's from tapping into some resources that you may have available within your organization, whether it's hiring a career coach or other mentor to help you do that, that's worth the investment, because essentially your career will be advancing as a result of that. And you're positioning yourself in a really strong way. So if a layoff happened, you're already ahead of the game. So therefore you can move into another position in the organization, or you're just confident and ready, and you're looking at that as a move to the next chapter in your career. So
That's very much true. Yeah, having kind of the core skills and capability and confidence that people can navigate in all kinds of macro environments.
right.
Do you see retaining like the core talents and top talents as the priority, even though there's multiple layoffs going on at companies?
I mean, I can't make that decision because I'm not, a leader or a manager. As a career coach, yes, I would say that that would definitely be something that would need to be a priority, because we all know the cost of the turnover, the
Right.
cost of ramping someone else up. That's probably 4x the investment in the original role. And so there's definitely a need to keep and retain your top talent, and being able to do so is a super high priority. And so if there was a bigger macro reorganization, then you're conscientiously planning for moving those great leaders and managers into another area of the company that worked and aligned with their skill set.
That's true. And you mentioned confidence a few times. How would you suggest someone to build confidence?
That's an interesting one. Some of it comes with experience.
Yeah.
Some of it comes with, that's a place that I work with clients all the time. So that can very much be a place where working with another expert can help you. It's a tricky place because it's not something that you actually can go and take a course for as much. Learning a skill is much easier than building confidence. I mean, there are courses on this. Of course, there's lots of learning out there. But I would probably say the best advice that I could say is knowing yourself well enough to know how you learn. So for some people, they can go and take an online course in 5 steps to building confidence, and they're good. They got it. They can put it right into action. For others, they want to have more of a trusted kind of one-on-one conversation. And that's what helps them to really uncover what's blocking them and be able to have some tools and skills in being able to build and have the support through the process. Because my experience is that confidence is not an overnight thing.
Yeah.
You could go and take a course, learn a skill, get your certification, check the box, and you've got it, right?
Yeah.
But confidence isn't like checking a box. It's a process, and a process of commitment and a process of skill building. And so, but then other people will learn best in a group kind of a setting. We're humans, we are social. And so a lot of times we'll learn from others. And so I will be one of the first to advocate that putting yourself in proximity of people that are really confident is a great action if you have
Mm.
this ability to do. One of my favorite sayings is that we are the combination of the 5 people that we spend the most time with.
Wow. Yeah, that's
That's a
very
pretty
much true.
interesting one, right? So if the
Hmm.
people I'm spending time with are the ones that are worried about their career or they're doubtful and their confidence is a 2 on a 1 to 10 scale, you're not going to be building confidence by hanging out with those people. No judgment. They may be great people, but if you're working on building confidence, then you need to surround yourself with people that are showing up that way. And that can be a really powerful way of learning too.
Yeah, that's very much true. Having kind of building the kind of community and people around
Yeah.
you that can help, I mean, support each other and help each other grow. That's really important. And I mean, part of what we're hoping to create in Emotions is that provide different formats for people to learn based on the way of preference, either in take doing a group coaching or a workshop or taking a course in on demand or one-on-one coaching. So yeah,
Right.
that's very much true. Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate you share all the insights. Super helpful for everyone listening as
You
well.
are very welcome. This was fun. Definitely fun fireside chat.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much again. Thanks everyone for listening in, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions for us. Thank you.